right, good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Woo, all right, everyone's ready. It's great. Welcome to MoAD. My name is Elizabeth Gessel, and I'm the Curator of Public and Academic Engagement here at the museum. And I'm thrilled to have you all here today to celebrate the artist Demetri Broxton. Oh, you know what? Sorry, we should turn down your video.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, what is that sound? Okay, I'm back. I'm thrilled to be here to celebrate the artist Demetri Broxton and his incredible, stunning show, Ancestral Echoes. Demetri is a 2026-27 MoAD Emerging Artist awardee. And as many of you know, he served for many years here at the museum, heading up the education department, where he advanced an award-winning program, MoAD in the Classroom, along with many other accomplishments, not least of which was bringing me on as I started volunteering here with Demetri in 2009, and I haven't left. So thank you, Demetri, for giving me my career. I also have had the pleasure of working with Leigh Raiford for almost as many years. So it's such an honor to have the two of them in conversation here. We keep saying over and over that it's a full circle moment, and that does feel like it is today as well. Before I introduce our guests to you, I want to thank our sponsors who make programming like today possible: Cadogan Tate, Common Spirit Health, CSAA, Gilead Sciences, KHR McNeely Foundation, and Salesforce. And in order to keep that funding flowing, we would love for you to take a few minutes to fill out our online public program survey. And you can access it through the QR code that's on your chair. And if you don't have one, we'll make sure you get one. And so collecting data and your feedback about the audience and what you enjoyed about today's program is how we show our funders that we're doing good work, and then they give us more money. So please help us turn surveys into cash by filling it out. And now I will introduce our illustrious guests. Demetri Broxton is a mixed media artist whose work explores ancestral memory, cultural identity, and spiritual resistance within the African diaspora. Broxton's work is held in the permanent collections of the De Young Museum, Renwick Gallery of the Smithsonian, Monterey Museum of Art, and Norton Museum of Art. He is represented by Patricia Suito Gallery in Los Angeles. In addition to his studio practice, he serves as executive director of Root Division in San Francisco, where he supports emerging artists through exhibitions, education, and community engagement. Across both roles, Broxton is committed to honoring ancestral legacies while reimagining a more liberated future through art. And we have Leigh Raiford, who is professor of African American and African Diaspora Studies at the University of California, Berkeley, where she teaches, researches, curates, and writes about Black visuality and world making. She is the author of When Home is a Photograph, Blackness and Belonging in the World, and that is for sale downstairs in our bookstore. And Imprisoned in a Luminous Glare, Photography and the African American Freedom Struggle, as well as co-author of Collaboration, A Potential History of Photography, among other publications. Raiford has also written essays on the work of numerous contemporary artists, including Dawood Bey, Latoya Ruby Frazier, Toyin Oji Odutola, and Paul Mbagi Sequoia. She serves as series editor alongside Sarah Elizabeth Lewis and Deborah Willis for Vision and Justice, an imprint of Aperture Books. And in 2026, she was named the Genevieve Young Fellow in Writing by the Gordon Parks Foundation. So I want you to join me in welcoming them, but I'm also going to invite Demetri to make an entrance and show you what he is wearing. Thank you.
Show it off before I take it off, because I don't trust myself with this. I'm going sleeveless too.
Oh, okay. Hello, how does it feel to be on this side of the conversation today?
Yeah, it's a wild experience. I think, like Elizabeth said, it's full circle. Yeah, when I came back to MoAD in 2016, that is when the first Emerging Artist program had started with my dear friend Cheryl Derricotte over here. And working with Cheryl and hearing about her process and how she wanted the exhibition to reach all audiences, but particularly young audiences, because that's who I was focused on, was just life-changing. And I was like, I want to be part of this program. So it's just incredible to be able to have this opportunity.
That is so great. Oh, you all can hear me. Okay, good. Well, I'm also thrilled to be here because you have made so many things for me possible here, inviting me to speak and to moderate and be part of the MoAD community and the intellectual work that is happening here. And so I'm really thrilled to be in conversation with you about this beautiful show that you've put together. I wanted to start with just a question because I first came to know you as an arts programmer and as a steward of Bay Area arts communities. So I wanted just to start, when did you start making art, understanding yourself as an artist, and how did you begin with some of the earliest works in the show, which I believe are these works behind us? And we're really fortunate that we get to have this conversation. We're going to be just sort of referencing around the room, which will be really lovely.
Well, first of all, I'm going to start off with just thanking everyone for being here. There's so many people, there's family members, there's people that I've known from all walks of my life, and thank you so much for being here. It's amazing to see you. I appreciate the support. In terms of being an artist, I guess I was a single child, though. My cousins, who I call siblings, also grew up in the house with me. But I was very, much of a loner kind of kid. And so I did a lot of drawing, and I did a lot of making paper mache and doing those kinds of things. But, even though I did those things as a child, it really wasn't until college that I discovered that art was my passion. I went to UC Berkeley and I was studying architecture, and this is in the late 90s, just for context. And the university at the time they were considering getting rid of the art department and ethnic studies. So a lot of us immediately enrolled in those classes. I took an intro painting class. I'd never done painting before. And I walk into the classroom, and Tree Williams, who is an African-American woman with long dreadlocks, tied up, listening to Erykah Badu, was my instructor. And I then noticed, I was like, you don't notice what you don't have until you see it. She was my very first African-American teacher in my entire life. I had coaches, I had janitors and office staff, but someone that I was actually learning from. And so I immediately saw myself in her, told my parents, sorry, I'm not doing architecture anymore, I'm going art. And of course they were like, you can't move back in with us, how are you gonna pay your bills? But yeah, it was just my passion. It's art is like a bug that gets into your system, and you have to do it.
So tell us about what prompted the earliest works in the show, the boxing gloves behind us. These were, 2017, 2018?
Yeah, 2017, 2018 is when I began. After having 3 amazing children, I was an oil painter before that. And, you have one kid and getting into the studio becomes hard. Second kid comes along, it becomes harder. Third kid, it's just totally impossible. And then I started also thinking about how oil painting, I loved Caravaggio, I loved, Leonardo, I loved these folks whose experiences did not mirror my own. And so I started looking for a material that represented me and my culture. And so I started playing around with beads, and a couple of my friends and even my wife are wearing some of my earliest beadwork earrings at the time. And then I started thinking, like, I'm not a jewelry maker, I'm an artist. You're low. And I will draw everyone's attention to that image. That's the largest one that's in the back, which interestingly is the very last piece that I created for this exhibition. And it is an image of my grandfather, Hiram King Broxton. And he served in the US Army during World War II and decided to take up boxing. Because he really wanted to be, am I also out? No, you're good. Okay. He wanted to be like his hero, Joe Louis. And so he would tell me, and if you guys know me, I've told the story a billion times, so sorry. But for him, Joe Louis was a superhuman. He represented everything that African Americans couldn't be during this time. He was able to be a black man, step into a ring, and these are the stories my grandfather loved to tell. And he would not only punch a white man, but knock him out and then be praised for it. Whereas, you know, as a black man, you were lynched for even looking at a white woman, you know, during this time. And so, you know, Joe Louis becomes a superhero. So I started thinking about that and the symbolism of boxing as embodying superhero qualities that, you know, extend beyond this human plane and this crazy political system that we live in. And the boxing glove became this perfect vessel for those ideas. So the boxing gloves have lots of ideas from Yoruba culture encoded in them. I won't go through that whole list for everyone, but the materials. Just a little bit. Yeah, okay. So the materials, the colors, throughout all of my work are definitely steeped deeply in Yoruba or Ifa cultural systems. If you know them, you know them. If you don't, go look them up. But then I started thinking about how, you know, beads in a traditional sense for traditional Yoruba culture, the word for the most revered people in society is translated to those who wear beads. So the kings, the healers, everyone who has high political or high social and political status traditionally wears beads. And so I started to think about contemporary life. And so you'll see the gloves have lyrics on them, and they're all from hip hop. Because in my head, at least at the time, hip hop artists who call themselves gods amongst men, who are braggadocious and talk about, you know, themselves rising above their situation. I mean, that one in the back is lyrics from Kendrick Lamar. So talk about someone who's risen way above their station. So, you know, I wanted to take the traditional and weave it in with the contemporary.
And you also talk about, I mean, when we were talking the other day, you said that part of your interest in working with boxing gloves and these gestures to the body, but you did not want to have actual portraits or figures. And I'd love for you to share a little bit what the thinking behind that was.
I love it. I mean, I was working at MoAD, and the amazing part about working with MoAD is the majority of the artists that come into the museum, they're living artists. And oftentimes you get to have conversations with them. Like around 2016, 2017 is when the art market took this huge shift, and Black artists or work by Black artists, particularly figurative work, became super popular in vogue. But then there was also discussions about the speculative market. And so a lot of folks were buying, you know, spending $1 million on Amako Boafo's work, just, for example, imagining that this was going to be, you know, this huge return on investment later. They weren't necessarily loving the work. It did not speak to them. And you know, I didn't want to participate in that. And so for me, the boxing glove or even a piece like the robe, you know, you can imagine the body. The body doesn't have to be there. You know that it's worn by someone in a traditional sense, even though I've rendered them slightly useless. You can still imagine this invisible body being part of them. So the body was present, but not visible.
I'm also remembering that MoAD did the portraits and other likenesses exhibition around that time too. That was part of the when Studio Museum first closed, Studio Museum in Harlem, and so it was part of their permanent collection. And so this real investment and excitement about portraiture. But it's interesting too to think about how even the market starts creeping in, concerns about the market, about audience, start creeping into your making of art. And I'm struck by, with all the work, but especially with the boxing gloves, all the levels of the layers of protection that are evident in the work, right? I mean, the boxing gloves themselves are a form of protection, but then the beads, the cowrie shells, the lyrics, the way that they are affixed to rocks, right? And as a form, not just of protection of Black people and what Black people face moving through the world, but also of Black art and Black images. And then you make this shift to portraiture. Yeah. Or to including portraiture. And so sort of thinking about, I want to get to the photographs in a minute, but I guess I'm also interested in how you navigate that tension with the market and the need to both make art express, Black life, culture, imaginaries, while also holding a space for protection and care and the inner circle.
Interesting. I mean, I think I just kind of want to also plug in some things. A lot of times you make moves through life and you don't know why you're making those moves. It's not until retrospect that you do a Sankofa moment, you look back and you're like, well, what happened? Why did I do that? So my mother passed away in 2015. And then so I was like, I'm quitting this horrible job that I have in Oakland and I'm going back into art. And it was like, I'm coming to a museum. I'm going to reinvigorate my art practice. And so that's what really brought me to the boxing gloves. In 2023, my father passed away. And I immediately made the shift to looking into ancestral portraits, not knowing why I was doing it. At the time, I was just like, I need to do something. Actually, yeah, in the moment, I was like, I have this idea, I want to do it. It's not until retrospect that I'm like, oh, I was like dealing through these gigantic life changes that had occurred. And so I needed to express it in some kind of way, and the art was the way. The ancestral portraits, to go to your actual question, were really just this moment. Again, my father passed away. I happened to be at a residency at Kala Art Institute in Berkeley, which is an amazing place. So much fun. And they specialize in printmaking. And I don't do print. I wasn't doing printmaking at the time. And I was like, oh, I used to do screen printing back in the day. Let me see if I can do boxing gloves, screen printed. And, nothing was landing for me. And at the same time, we had to do some much needed repair on our home. And so we're moving things out because huge remodel of our home. And I came across this box of photographs that my grandmother had given me when I was 19. And, at the same time, I'm trying to come up with this new language. I'm trying to figure out, a new way to express power. And I'm like, what a better way than to bring my ancestors into the equation? And so that's how I start moving into those. And did I answer your question?
Well, maybe you could... well, first, because obviously I love photography. What was the experience of going through these images for the first time? What did you find? What stories were coming to you?
Yeah, so in the photographs, as you can see, everyone is making direct eye contact with the camera, the photographer. And that was one of the things that struck me. At the same time, I was digging through Library of Congress images of African American life, particularly looking in the rural South and looking at sharecroppers, And the images did not embody dignity. So as I'm going through these photographs that my grandmother did explain to me who a lot of the people were when I was 19 years old, didn't write any of it down, didn't record her, all the things that I regret later. But at 19, I was like, I'm going to remember this forever. So I encounter them 25 plus years later, and I don't know who they are, but I can see their beauty. I can see their power. And, photography is this interesting thing. It's very much about the relationship between the subject and whoever's taking the photograph. And when I'm looking at the Library of Congress images, oftentimes I'm like, this photographer is not respecting their subject, right? They are looking at them as if they are, an anthropological display. They don't see their full humanity. When I'm going through the photographs of my family archive, there is so much dignity and there's so much pride and also just this hope, right? Because when you go to take a photograph and back in these days, they're not taking snapshots. They're going to a professional studio. They're choosing the outfit that represents them. It could be who they are in this moment in time, or oftentimes it's who they want to be and what they aspire to. And seeing those in the images, just struck me as like, wow, these people have this deep power and this deep pride. But I also know my family story. I know about how we have lost, my cousin who is here is trying to figure out how we gain some of our land back that was stolen from us in Louisiana. And so I know my family came to Oakland seeking, better opportunities that they didn't necessarily get. They served in the military in hopes of, thinking that the GI Bill was going to apply to them. And I know it didn't.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because I think there's a way in which I think part also what you're responding to is the conditions under which you found the images, right? Because in the Library of Congress, right, regardless of who made the images, they are now in this state archive, and they are in many ways they're cut off from whatever community that they originate from. And this gift of your family archive, right, that also finds you at a really important time, I think also is part of the power that it's not just that the photographs have power, I think, but also the conditions under which you come to them creates power and is circulating a kind of energy, which is so evident in the work as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so maybe you can describe how you build these canvases from, layer by layer by layer. Because, I want... The work is the labor is so evident, but I want you to describe it. I want us to feel all of the work that you put into these canvases.
Thank you. So I start off. So here's the nerdy process of it, and I know there's some folks who love textiles and the process of textile. So I rephotograph all of these photographs. Some of them are tiny, like this one over here. It's a little tiny photo booth image. So 1 inch by 1.5 inches, really tiny. So I blow them up. And I do use Photoshop because Photoshop can restore certain things that are lost. It can get rid of creases if I choose to get rid of the crease. Sometimes I like that lived experience of the photograph. But more importantly, then I can transfer it to a halftone, which is how you do a screen print. So the work is screen printed. I have to copy it onto a transparency. Then I burn it onto a screen, photographically speaking, not with fire, but burn it onto a screen. And then I'm actually pulling the ink through the screen and transferring it onto cotton. Most of my work is on Japanese sateen cotton because it's just luxurious, it's smooth, so it's almost like paper. Sometimes it's European sateen, depending on what I happen to go into the fabric store and whatever catches my eye. Like, I like to touch the fabric, everything. Like, I'm a little obsessed with materials. So I'm just like, ooh, this is a really attractive, sexy fabric. I have to use it. And from there, then I'm grabbing the sequins and I'm grabbing the beads and I'm looking at the image to try to see, like, what is the energy of this person telling me? Are they cool? Are they calm? Are they fiery? Why may that be? I'm also like, yeah, I geek out about, like I said earlier, Yoruba traditional spirituality and the Orisha in particular. And so I see the ancestors as embodying some of those energies. And so the colors that I choose often come from, referencing some kind of Orisha and the energy that I want to bring forward. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes I just intuitively grab things. And then, I'm hand sewing. So the process is there's one single sequin, one single bead, my needle and my thread, and I just do this over and over and over again. Sometimes it's meditative, sometimes it's really annoying. So this piece in the back in particular was really, really, like, I got through the first eighth of a corner and I was like, why did I do this to myself? Like, why would you torture yourself like this? But sometimes the work is just telling me what it needs and I have to listen to it. And then the other materials, the embellishments come after. So sometimes, a piece needs a scarab beetle. Sometimes the tobacco leaves of the tobacco farmer have to become visible. Sometimes a tree needs to, peer over in some leaves. I'm just kind of reading what I can't put words into of the energies that I'm sound very hippy dippy woo woo with it, but it is the energies that are coming from the person that I'm working with and spending weeks and months at a time, kind of in communion with them.
Well, first of all, we are in California, so so that's already there. But also, I think that a lot of times people don't. There's not always a space to talk about spirituality and energy in art practice. When artists, I know a lot of artists who will try and quiet that part or push it to the back, even though it's so clear, right, that's part of what art is, right? It is about, like manifesting energies. It is about, collaboration and communing with ancestors. It is a way of approaching the divine, right? Which is, I think, also, which sort of going back to this question about the art market, why I find that so powerful, because, Western frameworks of art history are always connected to the market, right? Like, we go back to the Medicis, right? And art making, right? But African practices are about living culture, right? Like this kind of living experience of art. So that's all to say, be as woo as you want, because I think that's one way to challenge the notion that art is somehow separate from life, right? And so I really appreciate the way that energy is very evident in each of these canvases. So I want to ask you about, so the photographs don't show up this way. You said sometimes you take the creases out, but you also take the backgrounds out, with the exception of the work of your mother in the car. Yes. And so maybe you can talk about that work, and then also around the decision to, isolate the figures generally.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So the work in question is the one right next to the altar where the living plant is, and it's an image of my mother taken in circa 1962, based off of what, the stories I can remember from her, telling me she interestingly enough, was the first African-American woman to work at Bank of America in Berkeley. And she decided that she was going to take her in 1962. Like, just let that sink in. And she took her very first paycheck and bought a 1960 Carmen Ghia, and she loved that car. She regretted getting rid of that car. And that was like the thing. She was like, that was the one car I wish I had kept. And so to go back to kind of your question, the removing of the background. So that is the latest. The rest of the images come from, as early as 1890, potentially, all the way up until, this is the latest one, 1962, that I'm working with, pre-civil rights movement, or right in the throes of it. And that's an important part for me, thinking about the time period that these ancestors lived in, when they were not granted their full rights to be a human, when lynchings were happening and people were being jailed. And so kind of what I'm doing, talk about the spiritual work, is I see myself taking, when I was first doing the work, actually, I imagined that I was bringing my ancestors from the past to the present. And in some ways, as I'm working with them, I am. But then I'm like, oh God, we're in 2026 and our rights are being taken away every day. I don't want them here. This is not necessarily a better place. And so I do a lot of kind of world building, where I imagine that they're in this new future. There is no imagery in this future because we don't know what that looks like. It doesn't exist. It has never existed. So they're in kind of this atmospheric, cosmic place, cast into some future where I hope to be as well as a future ancestor. With my mom, because that car meant so much to her, I was like, I can't erase the car. The car has to go with her into this, place, because she wanted to keep it. And it meant freedom for her in so many ways.
It's interesting too, because so the photograph, on one hand, photography is the ground for some of these works, right? And not all of them, I should say, are your family members.
Yes, there's two that are not.
Okay. Actually, let's talk about the ones that aren't your family members as well, and what brought you to them.
So I had been working through my own family archive, and then I was invited to be part of an exhibition called Black Gold: Stories Untold, that was at Fort Point, right under the Golden Gate Bridge. And we were to deal with, between 50 possible historic figures. I'd never worked with people who were not my family. And so as I'm going through this, it was a digital book, but in my head, it was physical. I'm flipping through the pages, and I come across the Shorey family. And so this image with the black background on the green wall with the green tassels is Victoria Shorey. During 2020, when we were locked down, I had lots of time on my hands, so I was geeking out about, history, especially local Oakland history, people that I didn't know about. And I read an article about William T. Shorey and his family. William T. Shorey was originally from Barbados, moved to the United States as a whaler, settled down in Boston, and then at some point, because whaling was huge, sorry, I'm like an old man. I like to tell stories, so I'm like the grandpa over here. So whaling was huge for the economy of the United States for so many things: fuel, to light your lanterns, for makeup for women, for the bones, to make your corsets. I mean, so many different things. And so much so that they basically decimated the whale population on the East Coast. And so he decided to move his whole family out west, to San Francisco in particular. He settled down in San Francisco first, where he met his amazing wife, Julia Ann, whose family started the first African-American church in San Francisco, were active in the civil rights movement, and she maintained that. So the wife was important as well. So I did a portrait of their whole family. And then I just kept landing on this image of their youngest child, Victoria, who is, historically, she was, at least in certain newspapers and certain circles, she became a whaler herself. But there are stories of her captaining her father's ship for months at a time. And so I wanted to work with her. She's a figure from Oakland that I think most people have never heard of. Beautiful, amazing family. And then the other image that also has a black background over here with the tobacco leaves is Robert Taylor, who is the grandfather of my amazing friend and artist, Ramakant Orwisters, over here. And I was hanging out with Ramakant, and he's like, "You like photographs?" Come look at my family's archive, which I gotta say, Ramakant, every single one has a corresponding number, I think in the Dewey Decimal System. And there's a whole catalog with who everyone was. I wish I could do that with my family photographs. But as I'm going through, this image just struck me, and I'm like, oh my God, can I work with this? It's his grandfather who was a tobacco farmer in South Carolina. I don't want to mess up your father's story. But what struck to me is he's looking directly into the lens. And I had been looking at sharecroppers and farmers, and everyone's like either toiling, which we talked about, it's fine, they can do that. It's part of the process of tending to the land. But there was no dignity in a lot of the photos that I was seeing, or they're in tattered clothes in front of their slave cabin. That's not the kind of imagery that I don't feel that in my spirit is something that I want to work with, at least not in this moment. When I saw him and he's looking directly into the camera, I don't know why he's wearing this amazing outfit. And what you can't see is he's just completely engulfed in tobacco plants. And this image is a really beautiful image. And I was like, can I please work with this image? Ramakant, and I think he had to check in with his siblings to get permission for me to do the juju that I do with the image of their grandfather. So yeah, those are the two that are not from my own family archives.
I love this, that also this sense of that you specifically want photographs where the photograph person is looking back, right? You want, which I think you have used the word dignity, right? And I think the word I might use is presence, that there's also a way in which that gazes, it makes a demand on us in this moment, and so I want to ask you, on one hand, photography it's a promise, right? It is this way of articulating presence, of dignity, potentially, right? But it's also, photography, as we also know, is also a problem, right? And you really are navigating that in so many ways. And so I want you to can you talk a little bit more? You said a little bit about the abstracted backgrounds and these sort of future spaces, but also the way that you feel that you have to protect the figures in these images from, both the possibility of the photograph, but also its violences.
And I'm going to plug in Leigh's amazing book because so many of these ideas are in this book. And when I read it, I was like, I have to be in conversation with Leigh. The way that When Home is a Photograph, the way that you understand photography and its potentials and its problem, and even the problem of the archive, even our own personal archives because of the absences. And so I think where we're going with that question is, as you say, yeah, photography has this promise, but there's violence in it. There's things that are left out. I think when we were talking the other day, I was like, yeah, my mother. How can you know someone more intimately than your own mother? But there's things about her life that I never knew and I would never hear about, like at least from her, right? So even if you think you know this person, the photograph is not giving you everything. And also, I'm like, in a certain way, I don't need to know everything about someone. I don't need to dig into every detail of your life to be able to feel who you were and to honor you. And so kind of given that with the photographs, I talked a little bit earlier about, you know, this idea of Black bodies in the market. So as I made this very first one, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm selling images of my own family members. Some of them whose names I know, others who I don't. And it felt grody. A little bit. I was like, okay, I have to do something. There has to be some intervention because the images of them and their embodiment is really important, but I didn't want to feel like I was literally selling them. And, you know, with just little thing about the art market is like, you know, I work with a commercial gallery. She sells to different people, but going back to speculation, at some point in the future, if I become important enough, my art may enter into a secondary market, go up for auction, where they're literally on auction blocks. And so this idea of selling my relatives on the auction block, I was like, okay, I have to do something about this. And so the intervention that I came up with was covering their eyes, and that serves two different purposes. Purpose number one is no one else has full access to them. It's the very last thing that I do before I finish the piece is to cover their eyes. So I'm sitting with them, I'm gazing into their eyes the whole time and getting to know them and communing with them. But no one else is, because some people will see them for their full humanity, others will not. So it's a way of protecting them from eyes that may not see them in their fullness. And then secondly, again, going back to this idea of Yoruba spirituality, the Oba, the highest revered person, who in the Yoruba cosmology, there is the world of the ancestors and the spirits and, you know, the Orisha and the great creator, and then there's the earthly plane. The Oba is the one who is the king, has the ability to communicate. And because he has so much deep spiritual power, his eyes are covered, not to protect him, but to protect everybody else who doesn't have that same spiritual access from being burned by looking into his eyes through the spiritual power that he possesses. And so I like to imagine that my ancestors are elevated to that level. And so they are these super powerful beings out in the world with high spiritual power. And we are not allowed to look in their eyes because of that, except for my grandfather. The last one, I was like, you know, as I thought about stitching the beads down, I was like, he can protect himself. He's good. He's solid. His eye can peek at us.
I mean, his fists are up.
Yeah,
he is ready to throw down. No, I love that so much. Oh, sorry.
No.
And it reminds me, we were talking about, there's this great essay by Teju Cole writing about a photograph of an Oba who was in the British conquering of the Benin Empire, and the moment when the British steal all of the the cultural possessions, the veil has been removed from the Oba and he's photographed, but all of his subjects are looking away because they know that they're not supposed to be to be gazing on him, right? And then this work of the photograph is this repetition of the stripping of his power, right? So this moment of tribal conquest, of the removal of him from the seat of power, and then also the photograph itself as that kind of denuding and subjugation. And so I think there's this real beauty in also that the veil is the last thing that you do, right? That sort of closes the loop of your relationship, and so that you can kind of send them off, right, exactly. Into public. I just want to make sure. Okay, so I'm going to ask a couple more questions, and then if folks have questions that they would like to ask, this is a good time to start thinking about them. I'm going to ask two more questions. One is, since we saw the beautiful jacket that you made, and there's just so much movement in your work, right? So the fringe at the bottom, and the beads, and the veil. And I would love for you, the way the sequins catch the light. Can you tell us about the robes, and then also the video that, well, I mean, it's still behind us, but to tell us a little bit about performance and movement, how they figure or don't figure into your practice.
Yeah, I mean, again, looking at traditional African objects, like I'm always looking. I love to go to the De Young for their African art collection to see what they have on view, or any museum, or just grab books to look at traditional African objects, and we see them on a wall or in a display case, but they were never meant to be these static art objects that we just appreciate for their aesthetic value. They were meant to be activated, and they were meant to enliven their community and bring whatever they intended to bring to that community as living objects. And so as I started to think about those ideas, I wanted my work also to be activated. My wife and I went to a concert to see one of my favorite singers, Umu Sangare, who is a Malian griot, and on the stage, her bassist is playing, and he's wearing this shirt that has all these tassels over it. So I run home. I'm like, this was amazing. I run home and I'm like, what is this shirt? I need to know more. And so, I learn about the Donso, who is the hunter along the Sahel region, which is the region just below the Sahara Desert. And these people are essential to society because they go into the bush and they learn all the magic of the bush, how to heal people, how to do harm to people, and that's probably why they're feared, but also how to hunt different animals. And they attach different things to these shirts to basically let everybody know what they have learned and what superpowers they have, but they live completely separate from society. They come in, and that's when they wear these shirts, and they're feared and revered. And I was like, I want to work with this. At the same time, I'm reading this history of boxing. So I am a deep nerd. So in this book, The History of Boxing, the author, whose name I can't remember, I think it's a British woman, is talking about Jack Johnson and how he was the first boxer to wear the boxing robe that we all associate with boxing. And he wore it to keep himself warm, but he also wore it because he knew it was going to intimidate his opponents. And because he was super fancy, he made them out of Italian wool. And so I'm like, okay, I have to make these. I have to make some of these robes. I have to collaborate with the amazing Barbara Kelly over here on these robes. And I'm combining the idea of a boxing robe with these hunter shirts. And in this one that we see here, the very first one, I'm really just learning how this thing works. The tassels are for activation. They are for, as the person is moving, to bring in that spirit, much in the way that the sequins do in the Haitian voodoo flag, which is another one of my reference points. They bring in the spirit. They also activate spirit within the community. So they're supposed to, uplift your spiritual awareness, I guess, at the time. Then I was invited to send one of these, the one that I'm wearing in here, to an exhibition in Canada, and on very short notice to the Art Gallery of Alberta. And as I'm going to ship it, the curator's like, "Oh my gosh, do you have a CITES license?" I'm like, "What is that? Do you have a Fish and Wildlife license?" I have no idea what this is, so I deep dive into what that process is. Basically, because I use cowrie shells or these natural things, you've got to get all these licenses. So time was running really, I was running out of time, and I'm like, what do? I don't think I'm going to get these licenses on time. What should I do? I still want to be part of this amazing exhibition called Second Skin. She's like, oh, just take photographs of some of your work, maybe of your process. And I'm like, that feels like anthropology. I don't want to do it. So I asked my wife, Andrea, to hold the shutter as I'm sitting here posing, thinking that I am taking photographs, still photographs of this work that I'm going to print out and I'm going to send to Canada digitally so that they can print them out. At some point, she's doing something else and she's holding down, the shutter release, not knowing that when you do so, it does these 50 shot bursts at the time. And so as I go looking through, I'm like, I thought we only did like 20 photographs. Like, why is there 400? What happened? But as I start going through them, I noticed that, it feels like a stop motion. And so this is what I ended up sending to them like 2 days before the exhibition was being installed. And, it led me to think of like, the work was being activated. It's not just sitting still as this object for people to admire for its aesthetic beauty or maybe some of my intentions. They are enlivened. And so the works on the wall have some of that and bringing that language. I love the large one because wherever the museum places it, the fringe always moves. It's always active. So it's activated their spirit presence. With it. The rest of them, if you walk by them really fast, because they're not by any of the vents, the tassels bring that movement. Just like, some people said they saw the work online. It looks completely different in person because you have to interact with them to be able to see that sparkle and that shine that Robert Ferris Thompson talks about being that flash of the spirit that is so important and present throughout the work of art of the African diaspora.
Thank you. So I have one last question, and I want to sort of where we started. You are an arts programmer and leader and steward, and you are also an artist. And so given the challenges that artists and working people are facing generally, especially around the closures of CCA and SFAI and the threats of AI intellectually, ecologically, what do artists need to thrive in this moment?
Oh, that's a big question. And it's a big reason why I decided to take the role of executive director of Root Division, because our mission is to support emerging artists. We're a 2-year basically launching pad or accelerator for artists. And so within that 2 years, they get a studio, they get mentorship, they get guidance, they get exhibition opportunities. And the whole idea is that after that 2 years, they are able to move further along in their career than they would have otherwise. Sometimes it's gallery representation right away. Other times it's just tweaking, their language. And it's something that I wish I had as an emerging artist as I was navigating and figuring out this system, which, being deeply steeped in it for the last 12 years, I still don't get it. There's still things I have no idea. And I feel like as soon as you understand the game of the art world, it shifts on you, and now with AI, things are completely different. I see people post AI art and everyone's like, oh my God, it's amazing. I'm like, how do you guys not know that that's not real? It's not handmade. The shadows don't look right. But people are fooled by it all the time and think that is something real. So there is a threat. I think artists need support. So you all showing up today is huge. Thank you so much. I think we need deep investment in the art. I won't get too political, but it's hairy here in San Francisco right now. If anyone is following, I was on a Zoom call yesterday with the San Francisco Art Commission, and we still don't know if we'll still have the same level of funding, which we need, because I think people see art as a luxury, as like, oh, these artists just, they're crazy people. But like I said at the beginning, there's this thing in you that you have to do it. I could go work in tech if I wanted to, but my spirit would be dead if I did that. I'd have a great paycheck, but it is not what feeds me. And I think we need to understand that in our society that art is essential. It's how we can talk about the things that we can't put words to unless we're Leigh, Raiford, and we have a certain ability with words. And, they're the remnants of ancient cultures. There's, the buildings are gone, the spoken language is gone, but the art still remains. And so, we have to ask ourselves if we want to be a society that is erased in the future, because this digital stuff, this AI art, is not going to be around in 200 years. And so, I think artists just need support, and that's not just on the ground with individuals, but it's the larger systems, especially in the United States, need to recognize the importance of art and how it saves lives, literally saves lives.
It literally saves lives. I cannot tell you how many times art has saved my life. Yeah. Art is a human right. Thank you so much, Demetri. I think do we have time for questions? So we do have. Okay. Elizabeth is going to come around for questions. We'll start right here.
Thank you. It's really such an honor to be here to hear Demetri today. Demetri, when I see you post your things on social media, I notice that you're stitching together each sequence, each bead, everything one by one. And I wonder about the mere physicality of it. How do you take care of yourself? But I got half the answer here. Okay. Tell me the other half. And the other question is, this 10-year work, it seems, how has it transformed you? Tell me a little bit about your personal transformation that has gone on assembling these wonderful pieces of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Guru.
Oh, if you don't know, Demetri is a certified yoga teacher.
And this is my teacher, so. The art is very physical. It's extremely physical. I have to think about my posture. I'm an aging person, and so, things don't work the way that they did 20 years ago necessarily. But I think it's that act of, I've had people be like, you can go to the fabric store, and I know artists who do this, and you can buy the sequin fabric, that's already stitched on there, and you can just sew those on. Like, it would speed your process up. The slowness is part of what makes it special for me. I don't know if it has the same effect for everyone else, but as we talked about AI, I'm intentionally slowing down. I am intentionally going back to a traditional craft method, using no machines, just my hand, a needle, and a thread. So it's a very physical process, and there are days where I'm like, okay, I can do 15 minutes, and now my neck hurts, so I have to stop. So there's a lot of just listening to my body in those moments. I should be doing more yoga. And there was something else that you asked about that, like your personal transformation. My personal transformation. Yeah, I think anyone who wants to be an artist is always trying to figure out that thing that is theirs, that's their own personal expression. And so right now, I feel like I'm really deeply in this thing that's mine, that I am grooving and jamming with. It's speaking back to me, the materials, the process is speaking back to me the same way that I'm speaking into it. And so, when people respond and they come into the exhibition, which I have to admit, I have been coming like throughout the week and just hanging out, not letting them know who I am, and just hearing people's reactions and what they have to say. And then sometimes they'll be like, what do you think about this? Just to, so to see how other people respond to the work lets me know that I'm walking the path that I should be with the work. And I love the discovery. I'm not someone who, is happy with, I'm not going to continue this formulaic process over and over again. I'm about to shift and do something different, because I also need to learn something new about myself and the materials and take it further.
I have a question that it's just expanding on what you've already said and what your teacher said over here. And that when you were talking about the piece in the back and how slow it was, I was thinking about other artists I know, artwork I've done that have taken a long time. And you have this battle, like, should I be hiring someone to help me do this? what is the value in doing it myself? It's a simple process, like you say, a needle and thread, right? You could train lots of people to do that. So I'm wondering if you have sort of delved deep in why you decide to do it yourself and what the deep value of that is.
Well, I will be honest because I try to be an honest person. You can get an apprentice, and I could go to CCA and I could ask someone to donate their time to me. That goes against my principles personally. And I just don't have the money to hire a studio assistant yet. It's coming. Because there definitely are parts where as I'm doing that, I was like, why don't I have an assistant? There's parts that anyone could take on. It doesn't need to be my hand. And I think I've figured out my process enough as I'm going through there, so I could pass that on to someone else. So that's my total honest question. I could say something poetic and amazing about why my hand needs to be the one on it. It's just the circumstance that I'm in right now. And also my personal values. I need to pay someone a living wage to embark in that process, and I work in nonprofit, so.
So what have you learned about yourself that you were surprised and weren't aware of before in this journey when you decided to focus on immersion and becoming a
Uh-oh.
in your artistry?
In my artistry, what have I learned about myself?
What were you surprised to learn that you didn't know before?
Yeah. I think at this point when I was a young artist, for me it was right after graduating. I was like, art is important to me. I want to keep doing this because I want to hone my skills with painting. And it shifted for me because it's no longer just about like I'm honing my skills, because a lot of that is for someone else. It's like I want to render this face perfectly so that others see it and they're like, wow, you're so great. At this point, it's like it's really what the work does for me. And like I was saying earlier, like we went on a 2-week vacation. As soon as I came back, I was like, I gotta get back into the studio. Like it's a calling. It's this thing that I absolutely have to do. It's part of my meditation process as I'm dealing with family and my job and, through the stressful moments or even my own personal health issues or things that are happening within my family. It is my refuge. I think Betty Saar was just talking about, if you don't know who Betty Saar is, she's amazing. She's a 100-year-old artist in LA, still making the work. And, she just was interviewed last week or the week before and saying that, at this point, I don't need anyone to see this work. I don't need another exhibition. I need to make this work because it's in me and I've got to get it out. And I think that that's the place that I am. Like I have all these ideas. I have endless ideas, but I don't have endless time. And so like I want to get through as many of them as I can because it's fun. It's a challenge for me. And I like that. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I put this color next to this color, how it's going to read to someone, or, if I start going 3-dimensional, if I start cutting holes in the cotton. So all these things that are constantly playing out for me. Or if I, wear this thing for these still videos and my collaborator does something different and this amazing thing happens out of it. And that's kind of what I live for, to be in the studio.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Laura Marshall. I'm a fan of your work, and I'm definitely excited to hopefully talk more with you. I just wanted to talk about the idea of ancestral veneration. So something that kind of stood out for me, you were talking about your roots being in Louisiana. I was thinking about the Mardi Gras Indians and kind of that process. I'm just curious if there's any locations that you'd like to show your work in, because I do feel like the experience in different areas would definitely make a difference. So just curious if you've thought about that before.
What did you say? Essence Festival. I love that question because, I think at first when I was diving into this line of work, this is gonna sound shady, and I don't mean it shady. I don't know that the Bay Area audience was really getting the work, and when my gallerist took it to Miami, suddenly the response was completely different. She also took it to Chicago. I think there's something about being in the work being in places that have a high African diasporic population that people just instantly get it. They know what I'm talking about. The label does not have to be on the wall to break it down for them. And so those kinds of places, I think, again, with my family having these deep roots in Louisiana, and so much of this is my grandma was a devout Catholic, but after living with her, a lot of the ways that she practiced her Catholicism had African resonances in them. And when I lived with her, I was like, "Grandma, what you're doing right now, that's so African." And she was like, "No, it's absolutely not." She didn't want to hear that. But I think in Louisiana, especially, these African resonances are just woven into how people talk, how they think. It's in the food, it's just in the soil there. So Louisiana would be amazing.
This is going to be our last question. A minute for you, Azoma.
What do you mean?
Intellectual brother.
Nia just said the same thing. Speaking about veneration, people are very, very complex, and you've talked about how this is a process of discovery. Some of the people you're like, I know a lot about or I know nothing about. How do you decide who gets to be venerated, right? What happens when you discover something that conflicts with some of these principles that you've outlined? Do you stop? Do you keep going? Is it your business to decide who? And they all should.
I love that question. For me, I so far have not begun working on a piece and then pulled away from it. The photograph is already speaking to me in so many different ways. Oftentimes, people think of artists as being in their studios and constantly working. There are days that I sit in my studio, I am staring at a photograph, I have Sade on the radio or something like that, and I'm just, communing with it, trying to decide what is the vibe that I'm getting from this image. Sometimes the images that I choose not to work with in those times, I haven't even begun the process, is sometimes it's just simply the photograph is too decayed. And if I were to go into Photoshop and try to restore it, it wouldn't feel authentic. And I have done that to where I kind of look at it and I'm like, oh my God, you can see that I've, because sometimes you're copying a section and rebuilding it in Photoshop, and if you do too much of it, it starts to not feel like the photograph. It starts to feel too much like I did it on a computer. There was one piece where the subject was kind of at a 3/4 angle looking away, and I decided, and the eyes were not looking back, and I had started working with her. Gorgeous, gorgeous ancestor. But she's not looking straight at us. And I was like, okay, I don't think this is the energy is not what I'm looking for within this photograph. And there's others where I sit with them, really, really great photograph, but I don't know how to describe this except for I feel like maybe this person doesn't want me to do this with them, at least not at this moment, if that makes any sense.
All right. Well, thank you, Demetri. Thank you, Leigh.